At my 50th birthday party, 10 years ago, my only guest was mortality. But that was okay. She brought a gift, even though it was the same old, worn-out gift that most 50-year-olds receive. It was that message, "It's not too late, Joanne, but it's now or never." And I thought, how was I ever going to get to those far-off and distant places where all the really important things in the world were happening? Like, how would I get to Syria to photograph the white helmets, or Yemen to photograph the children, or Kathmandu to photograph the living saints? Well, I was experiencing an awful lot of grief at the time, immense grief, and those plans were impossible. It took all my ambition to get out of bed in the morning. And so that's what I did. I decided to get out of bed at first light each and every day with my camera and photograph down on the waterfront. My agreement with mortality was that I would show up as a foreigner. I would show up as an alien. I would show up as a refugee from my own life, unfamiliar with the local customs, even though I was traveling in a 10-mile radius of my home. It really helped that at dawn, I could see what I could not see at any other time of day. And there were moments, and I kid you not, where I'd be laughing out loud, head thrown back in ecstasy, as the sun rose and the clouds turned crimson and magenta, and I'd be bathed in a succulent and syrupy golden light with a prayer forming on my lips. And I am not the praying type, and I don't pray to God. Nonetheless, the prayer sounded like this: "Oh my God, this is amazing! Thank you!" You see, showing up to this kind of beauty became the antidote to my despair. Beauty became my true north from which I could navigate. And one day, chasing that beautiful light down on the waterfront, I was moving from wharf to wharf, and I turned the corner, and a man was standing there, as if he were waiting for me. He saw my camera, and he asked me to photograph him. He then swept forward, removing his watch cap to reveal his shaved head. The entire crown of his head was covered with a tattoo of a winged Satan excreting human skulls. Yeah. And the pile of skulls stopped right above his brow. Across his forehead were the 3 bold numerals 666. I cannot remotely recall how I made the adjustments that were necessary for my camera settings to make that photograph. No memory whatsoever. But what I do remember is how badly that man wanted to be seen. And that split second was all I had to offer. But that's not all that happened in that moment, at least for me. There was a third presence, and for lack of a better term, I'm going to call it God. God showed up in my camera, and I was surprised to see that she looks just like a construction worker at the end of a very long day doing demolition. She placed her grimy steel-toed boot on the bottom of my shutter. She held open the top with a muscular forearm, and with her other hand, she reached through the shutter, through the body of the camera, through the viewfinder to take firm grasp of my throat. Because, of course, that's where my heart was residing. And I I felt nothing but ferocious love. I could not see her face. That was obliterated by light. But I could hear her voice. And for the record, she sounds like a chain smoker. She said, "Joanne, look, this is life living itself." And with that, the shutter released. Poof, she was gone. And there I was, photographer and subject, in complicit and intimate relationship for exactly 1/500th of a second. The man with the tattoo nodded his head and walked on, as did I, murmuring that prayer. "Oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you." From that moment, the inhabitants of this early morning landscape, namely the homeless, the recovery community, and the fishermen of the working waterfront, came into closer or clearer focus. And I felt like I had finally arrived on that distant and far off shore where all the really important things are happening that I so longed for. You see, these split-second, intimate relationships began to blur the line between us and them, began to blur the line between you and me. And in its place, I felt I stood in the family of man. But don't get me wrong, it's a crazy and dysfunctional family, filled with misfits and thugs, drunk uncles, crazy aunts, liars, thieves, and enlightened saints. And I could not tell the difference between the sinner and the saint. In fact, the camera would reveal over and over again that they exist in the same image simultaneously. These frequent exposures to profoundly painful and deeply broken worlds ironically eased my grief, deepened my empathy, and created profound, unexpected, and deeply welcome connection. And it made me wonder, what is it that ferocious love calls you to do? Ferocious love calls my friend to collect trash, plastic bag by plastic bag. He has collected over 3,000 pounds of material this year alone, and no one will ever know he's done it. There is a woman in this city who hires only felons and drug addicts in recovery. The sarcastic amongst us may ask, well, what could possibly go wrong there? And she will walk right up to the heat of that question with her fierce love and kick it upside down and ask, but what will go right? There is a young man in this area. He made a promise to a whale when he was 6 years old. And for 12 of his 18 years, he has educated us. He has informed us about the danger of balloon trash to marine animals. His ferocious love shows up as devotion. It shows up as purpose. Our call to ferocious love can arrive in a moment of divine inspiration with a hallelujah chorus in the background. Yeah, no, it doesn't happen like that. It's going to show up on the threshold of our deepest sorrow, when we are feeling our most broken, when we are the closest to our wounds. We get close. We get close at poignant times in our life, like at the birth of our child, or at the deathbed of a loved one, or simply when someone ahead of us pays our toll, and we feel that moment of surprise and gratitude. How we show up with our ferocious love to this broken, brittle, and embattled world are the stories we need to share with one another. These are the stories of our lived experience that will move us away from our collective grief, our collective despair, towards something far more important than solutions. It's going to bring us connection. Because, like it or not, we are so in this together. And like my good friend mortality will remind us over and over again, until it is too late, it is now. It's now, or it is never. The invitation is for each one of us, to show up to life living itself, however that manifests for you in your life. And when ferocious love calls you, whether it calls you in the dark, or it calls you in the light, or it calls you through your camera lens, or it calls you when you're blindly stumbling, answer the damn call. Because, oh my God, this is amazing. Thank you. Thank you.